Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Hitting Zone podcast brought to you by Youth Baseball Midwest. I think it's like episode number 13 or something crazy. I'm excited to be able to bring this podcast to folks. It's baseball topics. We talk about all things baseball. We've had a couple hitting guys on, a couple pitching guys on. We've had just a little potpourri of conversation, if you will, but again, Youth Baseball Midwest. I need you guys to go to YouTube, check it out. Sign up, subscribe, hit the dinger because that's what we do around here. Game 7 Baseball. Game7baseball.com is our tournament provider here at Youth Baseball Midwest, and make sure you go see Prime Sports Midwest down in Fenton for your sports gear. So I'm excited about this conversation. If you guys remember, some of our fans had tuned in, maybe second or third episode, we had Joey Cathcart on, or Josh Cathcart. I said Joey because I used to coach a kid named Joe Cathcart, but Josh Cathcart of the Hitting Done Right, and he had actually referred you to us to have good conversations talking about hitting, some of the mental side of the game, and said great follow, great and which I was already actually following you. I didn't realize it, but I was already following you. But if I could get you just to introduce yourself to our fans here in St. Louis.
Yes, sir. What's up, everybody? Hey, I'm Cameron Ginger. I run a company called Propel Hitting and Propel ID, and we kind of started on the hitting side. I've been around baseball my entire life. Went to my first baseball game when I was in my mom's womb, and I didn't really have a choice whether I was going to like it or not. After that, I love it. It's in my bones. It's in my DNA, and it's something I'm just super passionate about. And so as my career kind of went through and went on, I really kind of, just saw where the gaps were. And so as I kind of got done and got out of school and trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life, I really kind of wanted to help the people behind me. And that started with being able to help my little brother. I've got two younger brothers, and my middle brother was a very good baseball player. And so with all the stuff that you're supposed to be good at, right? But as we all know, that baseball, softball is so straining. It's so failure driven. It's so overcoming driven, and so like that's where I really started to learn. I started to learn about the brain and performance and how different aspects of that really bring the performance that we want, and it's not just metric based or mechanic based. And when I first started, I thought it was all mechanics. Right? I didn't have the mechanics, I didn't have the information, so we're going to go get that. And I'm a pretty self-aware person, and so as I kind of realized, hey, there's a lot more to it than that. So I really started diving into that and learning about that, and just becoming obsessed with human performance, how the brain contributes to that, how it works for each individual person, and really just trying to tailor help, instruction, just everything for the user, whoever that is, whether it's a 9-year-old or whether that's a 29-year-old or a coach or a parent, whatever it is, just helping breed the ground for breakthrough, and having those aha moments, right? And just because I think that's what enables us to be consistent. And so that's what I'm super passionate about, is just like being able to kind of clear the table a little bit so the enjoyment of the game is able to come out. And because this game will teach us a lot of things, a lot of hard things, a lot of good things, but it's also fun. And I think a lot of times people miss the fun because they're so focused on something else, and then they get done and uh, they're kind of shocked when it's done and when it's gone. And so, like, I really want that intermediate period to be full of kind of enrichment, good, bad, different, all the stuff. And that's what I'm really passionate about. That's what we're doing. That's how we're helping the baseball community. That's our lane, and so we're really excited, man. Thanks for having on. Hank, thanks for having me on. I love getting to talk shop and talk anything with it. And yeah, Josh is a great man, great dude, man. We hang out, we collab a lot. He's an awesome dude. So I appreciate the plug from him.
Yeah, are you in Texas as well, or where are you from?
I am.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm from
so
Fort Worth, Texas. Yep, I live in Fort Worth, Texas. That's where I kind of work out of. Been all around the state. Kind of go around all around the country to kind of like help train kids and teams and just different stuff like that. So I home base is Fort Worth, but I'm all over the place. Sometimes I lose track what time zone I'm in sometimes. So or what
yeah,
day. My wife always has to tell me what day it is. So
that I can understand on a lesser scale. I'm not that national travel. Obviously, I have a stranglehold in St. Charles County in my area where
That's
I'm
cool.
at here in Missouri, but I'm not looking to advance. I'm on the other side of baseball too, so I coach teams. I direct. I'm a director, train, and I've never even envisioned myself getting on that scene. And I actually started following Josh probably right after COVID or during COVID. And it was his actual PVC drills because someone talked to me about dissociation of the hips, and so I put it in, and he was one of the first guys to pop up. And then I think there was a conversation that you guys had, or he had shared something you did, and I was like, oh, I got to follow that because the things that we talk
Cool.
about here, it can't just be physical skills. And you had talked about a gap, and I want you to kind of, you did a little bit there, but it intrigued me what you meant by the gap because I think I have my own definition of it, which it's for me, I'm thinking maybe the 5 o'clock hitter versus game time, kind of the gap between there, which I assume it's
Hmm.
between the ears.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I kind of wanted to get your definition of what that meant for you, or what was the gap that you saw that you wanted to try to help with.
That's great. Yeah, I think all coaches should be gap fillers or bridge builders. Realistically, any kind of I think that's what a mentor is. Take it out of the baseball context and put it in a business or a marriage or life. Mentors are the ones that kind of like help you avoid the slippery rocks. And I think that's what coaches are. Coaches are mentors. That's all we are. And I think that's what it is. And I think for me, some of the biggest gaps that I saw, some of the biggest gaps I see right now, this very instant, is these players coming up know more about the swing that I would say some MLB guys knew 20, 30 years ago. These kids know what hip dissociation is. They know what deceleration patterns are. They know what, um, interior sling. All they know what that stuff is, and it's really really crazy. And I think kind of where that came from is there was a generation. So I'm 30, I'm 35, and there was a generation of players that didn't know that, and so it was, hey, let's go seek the information and bring that to people because information used to be valuable. It still is, right? Information is still valuable, but it's so dime a dozen now. It has to there has to be something else. And I think for me, what I see is all these kids know this information, but they don't know how to produce it, or they'll have a bad game and they'll say, "Well, I need a lesson," and it's like, no, you just got beat. You just got beat 3 times because of other stuff that's going on. And I think part of that came from so in my neighborhood when I grew up, everybody was older than me, and we played football, basketball, you know, pegs, like all the stuff. And so one of the games we used to play is kind of like jackpot, but for baseball, and like you had to hit it different places, and you got more points. So being the youngest guy, I didn't get tons of opportunities, but when I did, I wanted to make sure it came through, right? And so like the most points was always back up the middle, because like you're playing wiffle ball, you're trying to hit the ball as far as you can, as hard as you can, all this stuff, and so like the most points were back through the box. Well, that's why I learned how to like what we would call now direction, right? Or making sure I don't over rotate. All the pieces of information. That's where I learned how to do that. But I learned it at a very high level. And when you look at the brain, um, when it comes to change or forming a new habit, there's kind of 3 tiers, right? So there's like a thought process or a thought, excuse me. Tier one would be thought. Tier two would be thought process, so what produces the thought. And tier three would be like a perspective or a paradigm. So all that really means is that how you view something is how you're going to thought process, make the thoughts, and the thoughts are how you're going to do it. And so when I learned stay through the box because you get more points, really what I was implanting in my head was a lens of a glass of like, hey, this is good success. So me staying here and doing this well gets me more points. Well, then that organized my thought process and my thoughts. And so it was very simple. And I'm like I love information, I love learning, and things staying simple for me is difficult. But like there in the game and hitting, it was always simple, and I think that's because I learned a lot of those things. So my point being that how baseball is learned or consumed, baseball and softball are learned or consumed now is very different. And so it's like hit these metrics, do these moves, do this stuff, and you'll be playing professionally before you know it. Well, in reality, that's not the case, right? Take, for example, Jackson Holiday, probably one of the best amateurs there's ever been up until this point, right? You can put King Griffey Jr. up there. You could put A-Rod, even, maybe some people before him. But, like, to get to the league as quick as he did is unheard of, right? And, like, his talent and his ability is just out of this world, right? He got to hang out with big leaguers, and then he was around college guys for 4 years. Like, it's unreal. The cool part, when he got sent back down this year, right? There's an interview, and it talks about, hey, what happened? What'd you do? And he goes, man, like, I really, really, really had to just like embrace that like what I was doing wasn't good enough. And like that was so cool to hear a 20-year-old say, because like 20-year-olds will talk like that. But like the point being, like there's so much that goes into the finished product. And I think a lot of people have been sold the bill of goods that, hey, move this way, do this, do this, do this, do this, and that will make the cake. When in reality, like if you don't have the salt of experience or failure or all these key ingredients that don't necessarily seem important, you get the cake and it just doesn't taste right. Or they don't know how to deal with failure, or they don't know how to deal with, hey, you just got beat by a better pitcher and you had a bad approach, whatever that means for people, right? But like that's why you failed. You didn't fail. And I think like because so much of it is tied up in the mechanics, and I love mechanics. Like I've read more biomechanics stuff than probably anybody in the world, right? I love it. But like when you get stuck there, you are operating at the thought level, not at the perspective level. So the brain can't self-organize and you can't use your whole brain to solve problems. And I always tell, guys that I work with, girls that I work with, like bottom line is we got to beat the pitcher and we got to beat the situation that's in front of us. You train so your swing movements, your involuntary swing movements, like when you're not thinking about it, are better and they're good and they're efficient. So when you make a mistake or when they take a little bit off, you still have longer to stay on playing. You still have all the stuff that's true. And so I think that that's a huge gap. And I think like you said 5 o'clock hitter to the game time hitter. And I think what people don't realize is there is so much time and space between 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock. People don't, because those people that are 5 o'clock hitters know they're 5 o'clock hitters. And that 2 hours between the game time is like, feels so elongated to them. And I think a lot of times, like, because they don't know how to get out of a rut, they're used to being, so like, I coached a national team this last summer. And I had a kid that was pretty good, right? He's got some stuff that's really good, some stuff that's okay. We struggled. Well, we faced some really good arms that day, like really good. And in my opinion, you're never going to hit a changeup, right? He struck out on changeups twice. You're never going to hit a good one. You're just not going to, unless it's up. And even if it's up, you got to get lucky because it's got to be a BP fastball, right? And so, like after the game, he was like, "Hey, like, can we hit? Can we do this?" I was like, "I'll hit with you, but we're not going to talk about any of the stuff that you just said to me. We're going to talk about don't get into that two-strike pitch, that two-strike count. Then you don't have to worry about striking out, right?" And I think so much like for me, there's such a disassociation of unity in the baseball and softball community, where it's always like, oh, you got to approach it this way, oh, you got to do this, or oh, you got to do this, or it's all divisive. And in reality, who's stuck in the crosshairs are the players. And so that's what I'm very passionate about, unifying it and empowering players to go and fail. Right? Like I've got a rule like when we go over something new, say a new physical movement or a new thought process, right? Not a perspective, but we're working down from a perspective. I tell them, hey, you're gonna have a screw up round right here. And that screw up round could be 8 or it can be 30. I don't care. Whatever it is, screw this up. Because where else are you gonna screw it up? And I think, you take it outside of sports, but like how'd you learn how to like change oil in your car? Somebody taught you, but you have to do it. Right? Like I was listening to a business podcast on the way on like right before I got on here, and he was saying like this guy was saying you have to be a practitioner, not a theorist. And I think that's the gap. if you could sum it up, right? Is there's a lot of theory, good theory, really good theory, but then the game happens in the practical. And so like I think there's the muscle of the practitioner has not been exercised enough, and so it's weak, and there's atrophy there, right? And that's what we're seeing with the players that are now coming. It's like, what? And then it's really easy to complain, right? But like one of my mentors says, anything you're going to complain about, you better start in the mirror, right? Because he's a gen. He's not a boomer, but he's not an Xer. He's like kind of in between. And he was like, my generation likes to complain about this age of kids, this, all the stuff. He said, a lot of it's true. It's not wrong. But he goes, we raised them. So it's on us. If you're going to go anywhere, go in the mirror first. And I think that's where we have, as gap fillers, as bridge builders, we have to identify the bridge, identify the gap. That's true. However, like if we don't go up to the thought process or we don't go up to the perspective, right? If I just stay at the thought or the thought process, that cannot break through into the perspective and build down. Perspective builds down through, right? The glasses that I wear are always going to, if my prescription's off, if it's bad, I'm going to be gingerly with how I walk, right? Or my depth perception or whatever. So the perspective that we have organizes everything else we do. And I think that's where the gap has started, right? Is we're not looking at it from a perspective of the perspective of changing that perspective and allowing that to build down. And I think it's actually creating more gaps and more division and more frustration and all the things instead of actually being able to appreciate how good these players are and how they just need to be coached different, just a little bit different. The generation is different, right? Screen time is real time for these people, you know? So it's like, that's where I think the huge gap is. And I think like, yeah, we got to move from theory to practitioner, I think.
There's times in there I wanted to chirp a little bit to kind of add to the thought
Yeah.
process, and I'm sitting here.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want to learn here. Just somebody else is, again, going back to perspective, thinking about these things, and I can remember same things. I grew up in a neighborhood where I was one of the younger kids on the block that was not young enough that nobody would want to pick that kid up, but we used to play fuzzball. We had a house that actually the guy put a fuzzball court in his backyard, and so
That's awesome.
we'd take corkball bats and hit them with tennis ball bats, and they threw me, whatever. I hit it, and they're like, I got to have that kid. And what I learned was you have to ish or get off the pot, right? So if
That's
I
right.
got picked and I didn't want to be picked last, I had to make a change to be picked somewhere in the middle or want to be the first pick, right? I had to adjust. Nobody ever taught me how to do that. I had to do it on my own.
Mm,
And
mm,
we don't have none of that anymore. And that's where I think some of these conversations, like I didn't ever look at it like that, like the perspective, the thought process, and then the thoughts. I didn't realize I was actually probably doing that at a young age. I just
mhm.
thought that if I wanted to participate, I had to do something different than swinging and missing. So what did I do to get to the ball? That's all I really ever cared about. And
Yes.
you're right. I'm 44 years old. And we have this conversations with Brent Porcio from Top Velocity on. He asked me, why did you long toss? And I said, well, my coach told me to. I never asked why. He's not a big long toss guy. He's not opposed to it, but he's not big on long toss. And I didn't have an answer for some of these questions because I just did what I was told. I never had arm injuries. I never really had injuries growing up. So I thought it was gold. And so when I started coaching,
Mhm.
when I was 22 years old, let's play long
Long
toss.
toss.
And yeah. And then all
Yeah.
of a sudden, and I'm dealing with now 16 and 17-year-old kids. So the 35-year-old range guy, right? Guys that are 10 years younger than me, they're starting to want to know this information. Which then I was like, you know what? I want to know the information. And I look at the game like you do. I try to, have perspective on the game. And so when the kids tell me they can't hit slow pitching, I'm like, guys, I used to eat up slow pitching because that's how I padded my stats. I was hoping to
That's
get
good.
lucky to be 1 for 3 and a walk against a guy that had a plus arm. And back when I played,
Mhm.
it was 86 was a plus arm, 88 was elite,
Yeah, for
and now
sure.
it's like I coach high school baseball. We have kids that throw
Hmm.
96 to 99 in high school. It's just like it's bonkers to me. But
It's
again,
crazy.
it's the information that's allowed this. And I think about like how good social media is and can be, and then I think about some of the downsides of it too. You know, you talk about these gaps, and all you see is positive stuff. So you know, highlights, right? Guys that are the Jackson Holidays hitting 7 home runs or whatever it was in the minor leagues. Like, we got to call this dude up right now. And
Hmm.
I'm like, he still needs to learn to be a professional. He does. I know he has that with Matt Holliday. His dad played in the big leagues. Obviously, he's spent a lot of time here in St. Louis, so uh, we know who these guys are, right? Jackson Churios, the Jackson Merles, or whatever his last name is, from
Yep.
the shortstop at
Uh-huh.
San Diego, which we're playing right now. And it's like, man, these are some of the best in the world, but you have to remember 25, 26, 27 years old is kind of that key age group, I think, in the big leagues when you're talking about they're going to be 10-year veterans, which is not very common anymore. You have these flash of the
Right.
pans, they're in 2, 3, 4 years and they're done, they're gone. MLB teams move on, and you don't see that retirement plan anymore.
Hmm.
The 10-year plan. And so I just think about that. I never really thought about perspective, thought process, thoughts. I think I've always looked at it the reverse of that. I have a
Hmm.
thought. I need to stick to the process, and then it'll give me my
Hmm.
perspective. I've actually never
Hmm.
reversed that. And now that you say
Hmm.
it, I'm like, you know what? I actually probably had it reversed. That's probably why I had the success as a hitter. That's why I coach
Hmm.
the way I do. Um,
It's cool.
I never really thought about that until just now, and so I had to let you just keep going, man, because it was information. I think that if you could take the 3 4 minutes that you had there, I think people need to listen to that, because there's this. I don't know about your neck of the woods, but in mine, I deal with a lot of the everyday guy, right? The double A
Hmm.
guy, and when I say double A here, it is a kid that's, in my opinion, is a borderline rec league guy, and I
Yeah.
and I'm
Yeah.
not saying anything against rec leagues. I
No,
think they
not at
need to
all.
be important, but
Yep.
I hate the one. I dislike the classification of a 10-year-old kid, because
I'm
there's
with that.
being 10 years old and being really good doesn't mean you're going to be a good high school player. I've seen a lot of kids
Who
fail.
cares? Yeah.
Yeah,
Who
it doesn't
cares, really?
compete at your level. The coach should know what level you should be playing. So compete in the tournament that you desire, not just to name to sell folks, spots. But I get this.
Mhm.
I asked this question last week, and I want to know yours. Do you? I been doing this since I was 21 years old. I've been doing instruction lessons. I do it full time now, but um, I when I started, I had the 8, 9, 10-year-old kids. Now I'm like, I don't want to work with the 8, 9, 10-year-old kids. I don't even really want to work with 12 and under.
Mhm.
I'm asking the parents to buy a membership to my gym to hit every single day and not worry about lessons, because I feel like if you start them young, by the time you're 14, 15 years old, all they do is look at you down at third base on what I did wrong. Is that a thing for you guys down there? Like, do you find, and I'll get back to the question of why I brought up age, but do you find that, like, if these kids are so locked in on instruction, they literally will look down at third base like every swing. If I foul a ball off that you just missed, like, we know that, and they look down on you like, did I over rotate? Did I do this? And they forget like there's still a game and still a situation. Do you have a lot of that with your players, or is that stuff that you work on a young age to try to get them out of that?
Yeah, I think that what you just described is probably what I'm most passionate about. I think so. Lance Berkman said it really well on a podcast 6 months ago. He said, "These kids now want to be coached every swing. I don't know what to coach because I don't. The swing changes every time because there's an overcorrection." And so I think I really like Lance's perspective because Lance also he's not just he's very open minded. He's a good mindset guy, but he's also got a really good balance of like, no, actually some of this works too, right? And I think that's really cool because I think that's where it always is. It's not on either extreme. It's usually probably in the middle. I think when So there's this thing in the brain called the prefrontal cortex, and it's the thing that kind of like regulates things. It's risk, it's decision making, it's all these things. It's the thing. It doesn't finish developing till you're 25. And that's the thing that, because it's not finished, that's why we did all the stupid stuff in high school and college that we did, or like there's no fear, or there's this, right? And so that's what it is. And like a lot of times that isn't allowed to develop from an anatomical standpoint. It's exactly what you're talking about. Of it's almost like blaming it on a mechanic and blaming it on a movement. And what happens from an anatomical standpoint is there's actually less brain activity when you're just blaming the mechanic, or you're blaming this. When it's an actual problem that has to be solved, the brain lights up, because that's what the brain is. If you look at every piece of technology that there's ever been, it is modeled after the human brain, because the human brain is incredible at solving problems. That's what it does. So like an example I would give is, so if you have a hitter who takes a swing and they're body aware. So let's say they're, high school age, college age, or, someone 14, 15 that's very body aware, they know what to do. If they're working on something and they take a swing, let's say it's like an entry point of like, hey, we're trying to get this entry point smoother so it just goes here. We've naturally been having a move that's like this. So let's say that's the scenario. If they're aware, as soon as they do it wrong, they know. Their body and their brain knows before they finish the swing. They know. And so what the brain will do is now it will start working on solving that problem. But a lot of times what happens, and this is, I'm pretty straight up guy, right? I think a lot of it comes down to, there's a lot of insecure coaches. And there's a lot of coaches that need to be right and need to be the fixer. And not all that's bad. We want to help. That's a good thing, right? It's a good thing. However, we fix them. And what happens in the brain anatomically is then the problem solving starts over. And all the steps that it's already made starts over. And it will, because they look up to that person, they will almost abandon what they know. Now, like, again, like that's just like salt, right? You put too much on it, it tastes bad. So there's a balance with it. But like the subconscious brain, the stuff that's like way down in there that handles the breathing and like all the stuff, like it knows what the problem is. It knows what the cause is. And realistically, like it will fix it if we allow it. So now, like, the problem is it's instant gratification, used to scrolling, used to whatevering. But I think that is the main issue, is that that's why I have a suck it up round. Like, I call it something else, right? But I mainly work with older people, but it's like, screw it up, screw it up, screw this round up. Because what that's doing, right, is you think about like just putting the pieces together. Nope, not that. Nope, not. Ooh, that's closer. Oh, ooh, 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 all this stuff. Like you said, I knew I couldn't swing and miss. So like your body, your brain fixed it. Now, was it the most efficient way? I don't know. Sometimes the brain doesn't do stuff completely baseball efficient, but it worked. And it worked and it worked and it worked. So what we can do is really learn from that, and like, hey, like, is the correction about correcting something that you see that could be a problem, or is the correction for you as the coach? Because if you need to feel good about the person that's hitting, get out. Because like this is so difficult, and sometimes, and you've been in this long enough to know that like the coach relationship between a player is very unique. I'm not sure there's one like it in the world. It's very unique. They trust us. And so when that trusted relationship is constantly, well, hey, you did this wrong. I don't know, do this right, do this right, do this right, do this right. Now we just become a reactionary this, and the brain just goes, we don't know what to do. I don't know what to, well, I guess I got to do what he's saying. So I'm going to take a swing, I'm going to foul it straight back, and I'm going to go right there. That's a reflex. They're not even thinking that. They're not thinking, oh, I got to look at coach. They're thinking, because the brain is used to, it's almost like when I would call it like an addict mindset. So I used to work with addicts for like recovering drug addicts for a while. And like, it's very similar, right? It's very similar of I gotta go get my hit. I gotta go get this. I gotta go get this. And it's like once your brain becomes addicted to that, you don't think about taking $200 from your grandma. There's $200. The brain is there's $200. We need this. Get it. And you don't even have that thought. It's just Your next thought as an addict is like, I'm walking out the door with $200 now that I took it, right? So like it's the same thing when I take a swing. I look down there. That's a reflex. That happened without them even thinking about it. And so what that can tell us is that we have a we have a group of athletes that have their brain has been trained that they can't do it, and the only person that can help them do it is whoever. And in reality, they need help because like you can't just leave people completely alone, right? I would love that. That'd be sweet. But you got to direct some. However, we have to teach them how to problem solve, and then that will breed confidence. I think Alex Ramosi says it this way: he said, "You don't develop real self belief and confidence by shouting affirmations in the mirror. You do it with your book of proof." And it's the ability to sharpen and strengthen that problem solver muscle that allows them to have the confidence to problem solve in a situation that they haven't before. Right. And I think we say a lot of times, like, um, you've seen this before, you know this. And what I think what we're trying to say is, you're ready so you can go solve what you're going to see. Because realistically, they haven't seen the kid before. They haven't seen the spin. They haven't seen the tempo. They haven't seen that stuff. But if that problem solver muscle is strong, they have what it takes to problem solve what they're going to face. But they don't think about it that way. I got to get my A swing off. It's like, listen, I can list on my hands and toes how many times I got my A swing off. Half of them were playing wiffle ball. So it's like, that's great. Want to get your A swing off, but you're going to live in C plus to B plus. That's where you're going to make your career, right? And so like, if we have to position coaches to understand that, parents to understand that, players to understand. Players are easy. I'll just be real. Players are easy. Once they buy in, once you show them this and they understand and they just have like, man, I got this is crazy, right? I got 16, 17-year-old kids that will end on 3 or 4 bad ones. We're talking like ugly. And they're like, no, I'm good. I might go home. I'm like, oh, so I'm checking to make sure, like, well, hold on a minute, we can't quit, right? They're like, no. Like, I felt what I needed to feel. I know I'm going to hit tomorrow. Like, I don't need to go take 50 more reps. I know exactly what to do tomorrow. I feel good about how I problem solved it. I'm done. And, like, it's amazing to watch. And so when they're faced with, like, one of my guys just went to a school and they have a transfer that came in that they didn't tell him about. He's like, whatever, man. It's just a complete shift, right? So what did he do yesterday? He beat him yesterday in every intake test that they did for his school. He beat him in every single one. He sat next to him in class. He ran against him. He found right where he was and he beat him in every single thing. I didn't tell him to do any of that. Now he's a special kid, right? But like his ability to believe that he can solve the problem. Now this problem for him is this guy. You're my problem. So I'm going to beat this. And like, he didn't used to be like that. He was he was a frail, like got a sense overly sensitive. I think sensitive is good, but frail and fragile isn't. And but he's not like that now. He's still very tenderhearted, sweet kid. Like he's the kind of kid you want your daughter to bring home. Like he's a great kid. But his problem solver muscle, he's so in tune with it, and it's so strong that I can look at him and say, you're ready. You have no idea what you're going to face, but you're ready because you know how to problem solve. So, and I think that's where like that doesn't happen as much.
I was going to say,
And
but
you
that's
know,
in everybody though, right? I mean, everybody has that.
facts.
They just have to. It's going to be my job to fill the gap, as you will, going back to kind of the beginning of the conversation on how to kind of do that. And even for me, like I feel like that is a struggle, getting people to think that way.
Yeah.
Because I have a young man has a high baseball IQ. He struggles a little bit between the ears because he just doesn't like failure. And I could tell him, hey man,
Mm-hmm.
it's part of the game. Like this is something we have to accept, which that was easy for me to do. And I even tell him, I'm like, guys, I accepted failure. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
why it was easy for me. I didn't really care about it too much. I didn't let it stress me out. What I cared about was being a good teammate more than anything, and making
Mm-hmm.
sure, you talked about your A plus or your A swing, right? Your A plus swing. I always tell my guys, listen, you get one pitch and everything else has to be for us, like as a group. So if there's a runner at
It's
second
good.
base and you're trying to lift a baseball pull side and you want to hit it out of the park, so be it. You swing and miss. You do not get disappointed. Just understand what you did, swing and miss. It's like, you were cheating fastball and, you know, whatever. You got beat. So be it. The next pitch has to be a little bit more focused, a little bit more detailed. Drive the ball right side, move them over, have a ground ball right side, and that's a great at bat. That's a quality AB.
Uh-huh.
And kids don't look at that anymore like that. And I think about just exactly what you're saying, the problem solving side of things. It's like we don't do that. And I always say I always go the simple route and say we don't have enough IQ. And we probably have
Mhm.
enough IQ. We just don't know how to access it. Uh,
Mhm.
on just like you're saying in problem solving. I could problem solve in sports. I did not take the time to do it in math, or
Yeah, I feel that.
on my ACT. You know what I mean? So I understand like how in like I'm getting that right because I'm 44 years old, so I'm understanding the process that you're taking, and I love hearing you chat because it's like this you're giving so much of what I think I'm saying, but I'm not really saying because I'm saying it
Uh-huh.
on this generic version. And again, going back to the perspective, the thought process, and then the thoughts, I'm going to
Mhm.
use that. I'm stealing it.
Do it.
And
Do it.
and I need people to watch this show just because of that information there in itself, because I think I still can go in and hit. I still hit in the mid 90s, upper 90s with a BB core bat. I'm a little better with wood. I know how to manipulate the numbers. I can swing down, and hit it real hard in the ground and get some really high numbers.
Yeah.
But I'm chasing hitting the ball off the wall for a double, and everything else will
Yeah.
happen. Um, and if I can see the game very different. I feel the game very different. The hardest part is try to encourage others to do the same thing.
Mhm.
We struggled hitting a few weeks back, and we were going through this rut where it was bad. We had no clue at the plate, no approach, and it was frustrating because
Yeah.
I'm a hitting guy and I can't get my
Yeah,
team
I
to
get
hit.
it. Yeah. What are we
So
doing? Hit.
yeah, so I took everything away. I said, you know what? I'm taking all the comfort out. The pregame hitting, we're not doing. The only way that you
Mhm.
can pregame hit is between the ears. I need you to
Mhm.
envision situations. And I think that's what helped me be good. And of course, like you said, not every situation is going to happen. But
Yeah.
I could go, you know what? If I got runners at first and second, and he has thrown 3 sliders in the last 5 batters, I have a very good chance I'm seeing a heater first pitch. I'm
Yeah.
selling out, and
Yes.
so that's how my thought process happens. That's how my problem solving happens.
Uh-huh.
And when I get it,
Uh-huh.
I say, don't miss. Just don't miss that.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you get a hit. It means that you just put it in play. It might be a barrel into the ground, a barrel to the pop up to the catcher, whatever the case may be. Just don't miss what you're looking for. Because it
Yeah.
drives me bonkers when that kid takes that rep. He's like, it gives me that head nod. It actually drives me bonkers because
Oh, I hate
they're,
it. I hate. Don't not swing. Swing or
yeah,
don't. I don't want to see
just
that. Yeah.
swing or
Swing or
not. It's
don't.
like, what are you doing? Are you like saying, yeah, that's a strike? Yeah, everybody in the park knew it was a strike. It was right down the middle of the plate. But you said your favorite pitch to hit because that's all you practice
Yeah.
is middle T, right? So I'm like, guys, so I took, anyways, back to,
Yeah. Yeah.
taking that away from him. They actually had to use their thought process in hitting to envision the game being played out.
Mhm.
And so when they're
Mhm.
on deck, this always drives me bonkers too. Is the guy that's on deck always likes to take swings, as like the batter should, and I try to get my guys not to swing on deck.
Mhm.
While the pitch is crossing the plate, because I think depth perception is very different, right? So,
I agree.
your depth perception is here when it looks like it's 10
Yep.
feet apart. So your timing could
Yep.
be, he's like, oh, that guy throws
Awful.
gas. Yeah, when he gets 60 feet 6 inches, he's like, oh, he doesn't throw that hard. Well, don't
Yep.
swing the same time, right? Nothing's the same. You're 120 feet
Mhm.
away, but visually it's shorter.
Yeah.
And I'm like, just pick it up, put it down. Don't do anything else. And then start envisioning what he's doing. How did he start the guy off the inning? And Pete Rose said this best. He goes, I have 27 outs to be the best hitter I can be. That's paraphrasing. I don't know the quote exactly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. No, I understand. Yeah.
the 27 outs was key because he had his own 4, but he could learn how to set up his at bats. And it goes back to Ted Williams talking about being a guest hitter. He would take the odds that were in his favor because the guy threw 4 pitches. You can eliminate one because it's less than 5% that he throws it. And they had this information back then because they would chart pitches, right? By hand, they would chart pitches so you knew exactly what was, kind of the gauge. That's always been there. It's always been helpful information. And so I'd literally narrow that down to a ball that was this big, and then it would get this big, and it'd get smaller and smaller based on pitch counts. And there's none of that anymore because, like you said, we're so geared. And again, it might be the 35-year-old age group that started to build this. There is so much desire on how to move. And I will tell my kids, we do the Barry Bonds drill, trying to hit the ball straight into the ground. They think it's the dumbest thing to do. But I go, have you ever tried to do that? And it's like, what? I have to ask this. And we're going to cut this short here, but this might be the last one. But, hitting it down and hitting it on the ground to the middle of the cage, then hitting it back wall, then hitting it line drive and you're round. And you have to do something different in every single mechanic or depth or whatever to achieve what you want. But you have to change. You have to learn. There's no specific drill, no specific movements. You just have to execute. And it worked for us along with, taking out some of the BP, which brings me to this because I wanted to ask earlier, being a mental guy and things like that and talking about movement patterns, do you believe in muscle memory?
It's so funny, dude. It's so funny you asked that. So like, I just was like, I've just been writing about some of that. So muscles don't have memory. They physically do not have memory. What you are referring to, what that term is referring to, is like the technical term is a neural pathway, but it's like like memories of this is how we do it, this is how we do it, this is how we do it, and like that. I think it's very important, in how we create those paths are probably the most important. So I'll give you an example of what I mean. So I was working with some people in Tennessee last year, and there was just this kid that um he's 4 foot. He's like wants to be in the four, like his toes predominantly. That's his preference. And that's a brain preference, right? That's not a him preference. That's where he wants to be. His chest is this way. He wants to be that way. And so with that, right, like people that are like that are like Acuna, people like that may have a little bit longer stride, or they stride closed. The striding closed, a lot of times for people, it's just a natural deceleration pattern in their brain that says, hey, we're going to land a little bit here, so we can't fly open, we can't do that stuff. And so I was working with him, and I kept watching and watching and watching. I was like, okay, I see what the issue is. It's too much, right? So now it's this and all this stuff. And so like I knew we were working with a muscle memory or a neural pathway. And so I went to him and I said, hey, what did you learn was right for your back hip to do? Right? When somebody taught you this is what you do with the back hip, what was the overarching idea of that? And he goes, well, push, because you want to push all your strength and push all your whatever. I said, okay, that makes sense. And so at that point, I was able to then talk to that. And then he was able to understand it because it was muscle memory. And it was what he knew was right in his mind. And so, like, how we create the neural pathway is very important. That's where I think there needs to be space for them to find it, because they are now establishing that as right. So if you look at anyone from a psycho killer to the nicest person on the planet, the only difference is there's different things there's different levels of right. So like they have justified or believed that something is right or true that's just different from another person. That's really what it comes down to. And so when you're dealing with, this is how a neural pathway and a muscle memory needs to be there, because that's what we're going to do when we're not thinking, when we're just hitting. That's what's going to come out. And so how we establish those are incredibly important and incredibly vital because that you could tell that kid whatever you wanted to. Stop trying to pull sides, stay back, all the stuff. You could tell him all of those things. He could stay the most back. But in his mind, in order to be right, he has to push. So now if he's way back and he pushes, now he's there. Well, then somebody says, stop dropping your shoulder. In his mind, it's like, which one is it? Right? Because like and so how we establish those muscle memories and those reps are important. But this is even crazier. So technically, to learn a new skill is kind of like what we're talking about, to where it's involuntary. It takes thousands of reps, usually, typically, lots of hundreds or thousands, right? What's crazy is there was this child psychologist. She published her work like 7 or 8 years ago. I actually grew up with her, grew up around her. Now she's this famous person, super, super crazy. But like, she found through testing thousands of people across every different continent, every different country, everywhere, that kids or even adults, when they are having what is established as fun up here, instead of it taking hundreds or thousands of reps, it can take as little as 10 to 20 reps for it to become involuntary and become the new muscle memory. And now fun is just not like, hey, like let's not get stuff done. That's not that. It's not necessarily like it doesn't have to like the lovey-dovey stuff. But like here's what I will put out is that, and you probably have had this, right? I coach in high school, you coach in high, you do all the stuff. We know. What do they do when they pick up the balls? What do they do? Kobe.
Yeah.
Every time. My what I would put forth is an opinion, right? It's not based on tons of science, but my opinion is part of the reason they do that is because they're trying to have fun. Because their brain wants to have fun. Because they know they got to do this other thing that they like, so they need a break. So they Kobe, right? And it's obnoxious. It's like, hey, pick up 3 balls, man. Like we're trying to move along. We got a schedule to keep. When in reality, what their brain is telling us is, hey, can we have some fun? And again, fun doesn't have to be lovey-dovey, but fun is like enjoyment of, even if it's challenging, even if it's whatever. And I think like how those neural pathways are formed, like with all the brain stuff that goes into it, all the atoms and all the other stuff, is it can be thicker or thinner based on how it's put together. So it's like that's why it's so important for in that moment when they're creating the right or the muscle memory, they have to be involved. They have to. And then like they have got to know themselves. That's a process. That's a process. But they've got to know themselves and then be able to put it together. I will say this 100%. I don't say that lightly. 100% of my guys and my girls can solve their own problems because they've got to know themselves so well. And my job at this point is to continue to empower them and continue to push them. That's it. That's really it. Now, it's been a process, right? Just like that, like it wouldn't be real. But forming that muscle memory, that, or you could call it the foundation, when S hits the fan, when you hit rock bottom, what's your rock made of? What's the bottom made of? That's that muscle memory, right? When you have to choke and poke, or you have to survive, or when you have to whatever, what's your rock bottom? What's your muscle memory? And now a lot of times in players, it's I gotta I gotta make sure my hands go this way. Like, bro, you ain't got that time. You ain't got that time. You ain't got that time. There's no
Yeah,
way.
I tell you what, man, I have to bring you back on because I don't know if it'll be in a month or 6 weeks or something. I have to
But
get you
I'm
back on the
down, man.
show.
Whatever.
This is for me as a old school guy, like again, being told what to do, and if a coach tells me to jump before he ever hits P, I'm in the air, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I and never worried about what was on bottom, if you will, because I now I'm thinking
yeah. I
about
feel
the
that.
process of like you talk about this problem solving and
Yeah,
the thoughts in general, and I wonder how many kids now actually are afraid of those own things or afraid to actually question themselves or what are the real desires because I
Yeah.
do that. I just had a conversation. I was on the phone with my buddy last night for 2 hours last night, no joke. And we were talking about
That's
some of the
awesome.
weirdest things. Like, I own a boat, I duck hunt,
Cool.
an avid guy that I cannot make mistakes when I'm backing a boat up on a ramp that's got ice on it. Like, I can't make mistakes, right? So I'm talking about life, not hit,
Oh, yeah.
not
Oh,
striking
yeah.
out.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm responsible for a dog, friends, guns, ammo, you name it, right? That's, of course, I have to put my guns and ammo in there and decoys because that's the most
Come on, buddy.
important
I'm
thing,
with
not
it.
the
Come
human
on.
life. But I envision before I ever back up my backing up, right? So, and I'm like, you know
Yes.
what? If I do these things, I feel like I'm a little bit more prepared. And when I make a little bit of a mistake, I'm like, nope, let's stop, let's reassess, and figure out, pull back out, and I do it again.
Hmm.
And now
Hmm.
I envision this so much. And so, like, if I mess up, I'm like, what did I do wrong? Oh yeah, I did that. That's no big deal, right? It's not an issue. Just let's fix it. But I will dig
Hmm.
deep in some of the things that I am not good at, which I know that I'm not good at with the current generation. I am not really good with connecting with them because I don't like the music
Mm.
that they listen to. The rap music
That's
is
fair.
terrible. The country music's country music, but there's things that I just can't stand.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
again, the cell phone thing. I didn't have cell phones. We didn't. I mean, I
Yeah.
did not have even. I think in '99, I think I got my first cell phone, which was one of them big Nokias or whatever that looked like
Yeah.
Zach Morris from Saved by the Bell. So, like, that was my first
That's awesome.
phone, and I didn't. I mean, internet wasn't even that fast. I had to dial up. It's like I didn't
Yep.
have things that was instant access, and I forget
Hmm.
that sometimes because I'm like, you guys
Yeah.
have to do these things, and you hit me with the Kobe thing because again, growing up, my coach did not let us shoot hoops, which was fun. Trying to throw a ball in the bucket because I'll be honest with you, I still throw the ball in the bucket to see if I still got a little bit of touch or I can understand that
Facts.
stuff, right? So I will still
Facts.
do these things. And I love the carnival games, when you're trying to knock down or throw through a hoop. I did it with a
That's so
football,
good.
did it with a wiffle ball bat because you had the plate and wiffle ball. So, or wiffle ball. But I'm thinking about these things and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should let the kids have a little bit of fun because it is such a stressful hour that we're hitting anyways. They're already putting the stress on
Hmm.
themselves. The coaches want them to
Hmm.
be a certain way. The parents are wanting them to do something different. They're wanting them to practice a certain way. So listen, at the end of the day, what I'm going to say now moving forward is like, listen, shoot all the hoops you want, but just realize it's going to take time away from you. So
Facts.
if
Yeah.
it's if it's
Yeah.
if it's two or three, then it's two or three. But if it's 15,
Hmm.
well, I'm just going to stand there and wait for you guys to be ready because I want to learn how to adapt to the young generation and because again, mentoring somebody. My grandpa always
Yeah.
said your generation. My dad always says my son's generation. I'm saying my grandson's generation. And I'm like, no, it's me that was the reason why this is happening, or it was my dad, or it was my grandpa, because we always want something better for our kids. I think it's nature, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. That's right.
we're forgetting that it's okay to be a little tough. It's okay to tell them that hey, you're not that good. I'm not saying that you cannot be, because
Yeah. You're just
obviously
not good.
your athletes have
Yeah.
grown to be able to have the problem solving skills to allow them to be better. Not even the
Yep.
best, but just to be better than they were the day that they
Just
walked in
good
here.
at it. Yeah.
That has to be the
That's it. They're just
acceptance,
good at
right?
it.
Like just be better than you were when you walked in.
That's it.
Cameron, man, I
That's it.
appreciate this. I could probably have this conversation for days because I think we struggle with the mental side of the sport more than anything
Yeah.
right now. There's just not a ton of confidence and conversation with kids. You see it when they're 16 years old and trying to get people Snapchat to have conversations with versus talking to them face to face. And
You're
so
right.
you can see why some of the problems we have. I am going to bring you on. I will text you later
Cool.
and find out how to get you back on. One of the things that I
Yeah.
do want before we go though is I would like for you to give our fans here in St. Louis how to connect with you on social media.
Hmm. Yeah, love to connect with you via social media. We do on our page. We do a lot of like hitting stuff, but we also do a lot of mentality stuff, and we have stuff for parents and coaches and players as well because I think it's a three-headed ring, and Would love to connect. Feel free to. I check my DMs. I check the stuff. That's why I do this stuff and do all of it. And yeah, man, we're really excited. We're really excited about what we're doing, and just kind of we've got some really cool stuff that we're working on. Is what I got right here. Is just kind of like a mental performance test that kind of gets everybody on the same page, coach, player, parent, to really kind of elevate the performance. And we're really excited. So yeah, I'd love to follow along. Shoot with anybody. Shoot me a DM if you want to talk, want to connect, do whatever. I'm always down to talk, and I'll give my perspective, and that's really it. So I'd love to connect, and that's just going to be a Propel Hitting. We've got a YouTube channel too that's got some longer form stuff on that, and I'm going to be releasing some conversations we've had with our players too, where they kind of highlight. Just what they've learned and how they've gotten to that space, and how the relational side has really breeded the ground for lots of growth from them. So love for anybody to take it. It's all out there for everybody to take it. I want you to have it. I want you to have what I didn't have, because this game is great and can teach us a lot of things. So love to connect. Those are kind of the main ways that people can kind of get what we're putting out there and get connected with us.
Are you for the older folks? Are you on Facebook too, or just like Instagram, TikTok? What are you?
Yeah, I am. I don't post as much on that. I'm actually going to be better. I do some stuff on LinkedIn as well for even some business professionals. I put some stuff out there. That's kind of what I've been writing on some too with that. And so yeah, we're on all of those. I do more on my personal LinkedIn than I do on the Propel one. But yeah, would love to connect with anybody anywhere. That's what this whole human experience is about, is connecting with other humans. So I'm always down.
What I got out of this is it's okay to fail.
That's right, baby.
We
That's
need
right.
to have some problem solving skills. We need to have perception, thought process, and thoughts. It's kind of wild because I try to compare certain things to baseball in life, so to try to get kids to understand certain things, how to kick a sock. I mean, I literally try to find the perspective or relationships, and I wasn't prepared to talk about addicts or psycho killers, but you know what? The thing is, but you're correct though. It's what side of the brain, right? And it's the same thing as happiness and sadness, and it's how you perceive that information. So I love that piece, Cameron. And again, follow him on YouTube, follow him on Instagram, like whatever the things are, and then check out this video today. And you can find us on Youth Baseball Midwest on YouTube. We're on all the socials as well. And again, shout out to Cameron, Propel ID, and our sponsors, Game 7 Baseball and Prime Sports Midwest. And Cameron, I appreciate it, man. Have a good rest of your day and enjoy the rest of summer. Won't be long.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it, man. Look, I appreciate the time and the conversation and all the stuff, man. Look forward to connecting more.
Yeah, I have some more questions, but we'll talk about that offline. But
let's get it, baby. I'm in.
I appreciate you, bud. Thanks, Cameron.